This story is about a woman named Nadira Osei-Mensah, and it is about the 6 people who heard what she said and did not stop what was coming. I want to be careful with that framing, because did not stop it is not the same as wanted it to happen. Most of the people in this story are not bad. They are ordinary, imperfect, socially conditioned human beings who encountered a warning they did not know how to receive, inside frameworks that were not designed to take the warning seriously. That is the most disturbing version of a story like this. It is also the most honest one. Nadira Osei-Mensah was 34 years old, a nurse at a children's hospital, a mother of 2 daughters aged 8 and 5. Over approximately 18 months, she told the people around her, with increasing clarity and increasing desperation, that her husband was planning to kill her. She said it to her sister. She said it to a colleague. She said it to a police officer. She said it to her pastor. She said it to her husband's own mother. She said it finally to a judge in a family court proceeding. She said it loud enough, clearly enough, and in the right rooms, often enough that there is no version of events in which her fear was a secret. Nadira Osei-Mensah died on a Friday evening in March 2019. Her husband, Kweku Osei-Mensah, was arrested the following morning, convicted in 2021. Life without parole. He has never expressed remorse. What follows is told through the voices of the people who heard Nadira speak, because the question this case demands is not, how did a man kill his wife? The question is, how did the world around her let him? Andrea Osei is Nadira's younger sister by 3 years. In the spring of 2017, Nadira called Andrea from her car after the girls were asleep and Kweku was out for the evening. She said, "I think Kweku is going to kill me. I need you to know that if something happens to me, he did it." Andrea has given this account in multiple formats, in the police investigation, in a trial statement, and in a long public interview in 2022. In every version, she describes her reaction the same way. She told Nadira she was being dramatic. She told her that Kweku had always seemed fine to her. She told her that if things were really bad, she should think about leaving. She told her she loved her. She did not call back the next day. She called the following week, and the conversation was about something else, and the subject did not come up again for 5 months. Andrea has said publicly, without hedging, that she does not forgive herself for this. Not performatively. She says it in the way of someone who has had the thought every single day for 6 years and has not found a way to put it down. She did not disbelieve Nadira. She disbelieved the severity because the Kweku she knew was polished and calm and did not seem like the kind of man who would do that. What seemed like the kind of man means, and what it costs us when we let it be a disqualifying criterion, is something domestic violence researchers have been trying to explain to the public for decades. Andrea Osei is now one of the most effective messengers that explanation has. She said it so clearly, and I heard it so clearly, and I still found a way to not believe it. Andrea Osei, 2022. Dr. Fatima Karimov had worked alongside Nadira on the pediatric ward for 4 years. In the summer of 2017, during a break between shifts, Nadira told her she was afraid of her husband and that she thought he might hurt her. She was specific. Kweku had told her during an argument the previous week that she did not understand what he was capable of. She said it was not the first time. She said she did not know what to do. Dr. Karimov told Nadira that the hospital had an employee assistance program with counseling services and that she should speak to HR about resources for people in difficult home situations. She said she was sorry. She said she hoped things would get better. She did not ask what he was capable of meant to Nadira when she heard it. She did not ask whether the girls were safe. She did not ask whether Nadira had anywhere she could go. She gave the institutional answer in your shoulders, the one that transfers responsibility cleanly to another department. And they both went back to work. In her trial testimony, Dr. Karimov said she hadn't understood the conversation as a direct threat to Nadira's life. She interpreted it as a difficult marital situation. She was a sympathetic witness, a professional woman who had received a distress signal, processed it through the only framework available to her, and given a technically reasonable response that was catastrophically insufficient. The framework did not include the question, is this woman going to be killed? In September 2017, Nadira went to the police. This is the detail that most people find hardest to sit with, because going to the police is supposed to be the definitive step, the moment when the institutional apparatus of protection is engaged. Nadira went. She filed a report. Officer Dennis Reeves interviewed her for approximately 25 minutes. Nadira told Officer Reeves about the threats, about the escalating behavior, about the time Kweku had grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks that had faded by the time she reached the station. She told him she was frightened for herself and her daughters. Officer Reeves explained that without documented physical evidence or a specific credible threat, there was limited action the department could take. He gave her a pamphlet for the county domestic violence advocacy organization. He told her to call 911 if anything escalated. He logged the report. Officer Reeves was not lying about the legal constraints. The law in most jurisdictions does not allow police to arrest someone for a credible threat unless that threat meets a specific threshold of documented imminence. What the law permits and what the situation required were not the same thing. Officer Reeves had the law, Nadira had the threat. The pamphlet was where those two things met. She took it home. She did not call the domestic violence organization for another 4 months. When she did, she was placed on a waiting list. There is a lethality assessment tool, a standardized 10-question instrument used to identify when a domestic violence situation has crossed from dangerous to imminently lethal. That was not part of the city police department's protocol in 2017. It was adopted in 2020, 14 months after Nadira died. If it had been used at the September 2017 contact, Nadira would have scored the maximum. The protocol associated with a maximum score would have triggered a different set of responses. 14 months. Pastor Emmanuel Yeboah had known Nadira since before her marriage. He had officiated at her wedding. He had baptized both of her daughters. When she came to him in November 2017 and told him she was afraid Kweku was going to kill her, he did not disbelieve her. But his response was shaped by a theological and cultural framework that positioned marital preservation as the primary goal of pastoral intervention in a troubled marriage. Pastor Yeboah has been transparent about this in subsequent public conversations. He told Nadira he believed her fear was real, but that he also believed Kweku was a man who could be reached, that prayer and pastoral counseling could transform the marriage, and that leaving was a last resort. He offered to mediate. He met with Kweku. He did not tell Kweku that Nadira had expressed fear for her life. He framed it as a communication difficulty. Kweku said the right things. conversation ended with Pastor Yeboah feeling that progress had been made. Pastor Yeboah has since revised his pastoral training materials on domestic violence. He speaks at denominational conferences about what he now calls the theology of false hope in abusive marriage situations. He uses Nadira's case as his primary teaching example. He carries it. Carrying it is the least he can do, he has said. But in November 2017, a woman who was afraid she was going to be killed went to a trusted authority and was redirected toward a process that required her to remain in proximity to the man she feared. In January 2018, Nadira did something that required a specific kind of courage that is almost impossible to understand from the outside. She went to her mother-in-law. She sat in Gloria Osei-Mensah's kitchen and told her directly that she was frightened of Kweku and needed Gloria to talk to him. She believed that as his mother, Gloria had a reach that institutional interventions did not. What we know of Gloria's response comes from Nadira's subsequent account to her sister. According to that account, Gloria told Nadira that Kweku would not harm her, that he was a good man who sometimes had difficulty expressing himself, and that in their family you did not take problems outside the family. She offered to speak to Kweku. She did speak to him. What she said is not known. What he did after that conversation is consistent with a man who understood that his mother would not hold him accountable. Gloria Osei-Mensah was present at Kweku's trial every day. She sat behind the defense table. She has not made any public statement about Nadira since the verdict was delivered. By August 2018, Nadira had filed for divorce. She appeared before family court judge Margaret Holloway requesting a protective order. Her affidavit was 23 pages, specific, chronological, supported by the 2017 police report, and a written statement from her therapist. Judge Holloway granted the order. It prohibited Kweku from approaching within 100 yards of Nadira, her home, her workplace, and the children's school. It was a formal legal document. It was served on Kweku. He acknowledged receipt. He signed the form. Protective orders are pieces of paper. They function as legal authority, and when violated, they create grounds for arrest. They do not physically prevent the person they name from doing what they intend to do. A man who intends to kill his wife does not stop intending to do that because a judge has signed a document. The order was not insufficient by any formal measure. It was the full extent of what the family court system could provide. The full extent was not enough. Nadira Osei-Mensah died on a Friday evening in March 2019, 7 months after the protective order was granted, in the driveway of her sister Andrea's house. Kweku had followed her from work. He had access to a vehicle she didn't know about. The protective order was in her purse. I want to hold all 6 of these voices in the same frame for a moment because there is something important in seeing them together. Andrea Osei, who loved her sister. Dr. Fatima Karimov, who cared about her colleague. Officer Dennis Reeves, who followed procedure. Pastor Emmanuel Yeboah, who believed in reconciliation. Gloria Osei-Mensah, who protected her son. Judge Margaret Holloway, who granted every legal remedy the court had to offer. Not one of these people wanted Nadira to die. Not one was acting in bad faith. All of them received her warning. None of them stopped what was coming. The domestic violence research community calls this the web of silence. Not the silence of disbelief, but the silence of systems and relationships and cultural frameworks that are each individually operating as designed, and that collectively fail to produce the outcome the situation requires. The police gave a pamphlet because that is what the law allows. The pastor counseled reconciliation because that is what his theology requires. The family court issued a protective order because that is what the law provides. No single failure is catastrophic. The aggregate is fatal. What would have helped Nadira? Researchers who study these cases consistently identify the same interventions. Coordinated multi-agency response protocols in which a credible threat at one contact point automatically elevates to others. Professional domestic violence advocates embedded in police departments, hospitals, and faith communities. Lethality assessment tools used at every contact where a survivor discloses fear. And housing assistance that does not require a waiting list. Nadira would have scored maximum on the lethality assessment. The tool existed. It was not yet in use here. That is the measure of what delayed institutional change costs when calculated in human terms. Nadira's daughters are 12 and 9 now. They are being raised by Andrea. Andrea drives different routes on Saturdays. She does not keep to any particular schedule. She has said that she is still learning how to live in a world where the phone does not ring on a specific number anymore. She has also said, and I want to end with this because it is the truest thing anyone has said about this case, that she does not regret the 6 years of Saturday drives. She regrets that they were necessary,